So something a little bit different today. I'm going to continue my walk along the River Roding. A couple of weeks ago I walked along the Aldersbrook, a tributary of the Roding, although some people say it's a meander of the Roding. We can have that debate later on. But after making that video, I mentioned the friends of the wonderful, brilliant Friends of the River Roding, and Paul Powlesland got in touch from the Friends of the River Roding and said he could show me some of the kind of secret hidden places along the Roding between Ilford and Barking. And I've not actually walked along the west bank of the Roding down to the end where it meets the Barking Creek, where it meets the Thames. So I wanted to do that anyway, and I actually have someone with me today who knows about the River Roding. It's Paul over there.
Hello.
And in case you're wondering, we're going to be doing this in a completely COVID-safe, socially distanced way, in line with all the regulations and all the rest of it. So I'm really looking forward to this today. It's as you know, I'm a solitary walker, and hey, I have somebody with me at least 2 meters away the entire time, but also someone with real knowledge of the area and real knowledge of the river, somebody who lives on the river even. So this is a very big day. So this is a park, a new park underneath the North Circular flyover that Redbridge Council are creating here. It's quite a noble attempt. There's Paul striding ahead. We're back here at Ilford, just at the bottom of Ilford Hill, and this is where we're going to pick up the Roding. So Paul was telling me that part of what they're doing at the Friends of the River Roding is trying to create a continuous walking route from Redbridge all the way down to the Barking Creek, because at the moment there are a number of major diversions, and they've been scoping out how you could create a continuous path all the way down to the confluence with the Thames, which would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Actually I say this is the head of navigation. The head of navigation, River Roding, is actually in the middle of the road underneath the bridge there, because it used to be Ilford Bridge, and when they widened the road, it now falls somewhere in the middle of this massive wide bridge. The act that gave rise to navigation was I think it was the River Roding Act 1737, it was an act of Parliament, which was an act to make the river navigable from Barking up to Ilford Bridge. And it was regularly used up until the late 60s, and there hasn't been a single large vessel come to Ilford since then. And we're hoping to be the first, well, when COVID ends basically, we're going to have the first cruise up here.
So we're just going to go up here beside the North Circular and come back round onto the River Roding path. This is all new to me, by the way. I've never been up here before. Paul's a great character. Not only is he nimble and puckish, but he's also a barrister as well. So he really knows the kind of legal lie of the land, literally and metaphorically. So it's great to see someone with a really quite demanding job. He spends all his free time trying to clean up and save our precious river here. It's people like Paul and the Friends of the River Roding that really keep the city alive. But the river is just down there. And here's another little secret path along the Roding. Yeah, I never would have found this on my own. This is why we need Paul here to show me aspects of the Roding that I've never seen before. Fair amount of rubbish down here, but a few temporary dwellings. So we're back up here by the bridge on Ilford Hill. This little open space here, and there is you can probably hear it underfoot. There's so much rubbish down here. It's ridiculous.
The North Circular there, down to about halfway to Barking, is probably the most built up that the entire river is. It's basically that canyon like all the way through here, with very little greening on either side.
So Paul was just saying there were wharfs along here, and this was the site of a gasworks that was wiped out by the North Circular. There's a bloke cooking his lunch down there. So back along this rubbish-strewn path here. So this section here, the Friends of River Roading haven't actually got this far, so hence it's not really been properly cleaned up, but they come in and clean up all the rubbish that's been left behind by people. So you can see the contrast. This is how far up the river from the mouth that the Friends have come. It makes this nice and clear of rubbish, and it's a nice walking path.
And this is the remains of what were old wharves, possibly part of the gasworks, possibly part of Ilford Wharf. So there's like concrete under here and there's sort of hard concrete edges there. You see it a bit better through here?
You'll have to forgive us if the audio isn't as good as it could be, because we're doing this in a COVID-safe way. So that's why there might be the odd bit of subtitling, or you might think, oh, that audio isn't as clean as it is on the radio. I don't hear that on Radio 4. That's why. So that's Paul sitting on one of the old moorings there. The Friends of the River Roading hope to turn this into a visitor's mooring for anyone intrepid enough to bring their narrowboat up the Roading as far as Ilford, which can only be done on the high tide.
So I started researching why this bit of land wasn't open, and up until a few years ago you basically had to, from Ilford, divert all the way around lots of different residential streets in East Ham. From Barking down to the Thames there's a path, and from Ilford up to Essex there's a path, but there's this missing section. And if you look on Google Earth, it's all clear, it's green land, there's no buildings in the way. And I researched the titles online. It's owned by TfL and Red Bridge Council, who are public authorities. And I just thought this land should be open to the public. And so we've made it so. And this is the river here. We're going to walk down today. And you can see this little raised river wall, which is an ancient flood defence alongside the river. And on this map, it's called the Wall. It's got its own name, so it's actually clearly a route. And it's marked in 1894 as a footpath. And it's obvious why that would be used as a path, right? Because all this area here, the Ilford Levels, is basically a marsh. And so I think there's a very good argument that this route we're going to take is an ancient public footpath.
This is one of the paths that the Friends of the River Roading Trust cut through the brambles. Look at this.
We think they planted these trees in the 80s when they built the North Circle. To act as a pollution and sound barrier, but they're now like a perfect maturity, and they form this excellent footpath width all the way down to Barking almost, so you can walk down in a colonnade of trees alongside the roading. This is, I think, probably the biggest piece of riverside land that could be opened up for relatively nothing in London. There's nowhere else where it's this easy that you can open up such a huge and, I'm going to say, quite beautiful riverside space.
So we're walking along a brand new riverside space for London here, created by the Friends of the River Roading. So Paul was saying that the Roading is now navigable all the way up to Ilford Bridge, which is a historic moment. So they're going to wait till post-COVID so they can do an official cruise up the Roading from Barking to Ilford with all the dignitaries of the local authority. Well, that's the plan anyway. So these are some of the bags of rubbish that have been collected by the Friends of the River Roading, and we should all be immensely grateful that they come out here and do this in their own time of their own accord, and this amazing work you do, Paul.
Yeah, so when I came here 4 years ago to start the project, I wanted to start a community of boaters, people who live on the river, who love it, and who want to spend their time restoring it and making it better. So as you see, when we get down to Barking, we've now got 7 boats in our community moorings, and everyone puts in at least 12 hours a month of work to clean up rubbish, plant trees, keep this pathway open, and we all pay £1,000 a year into our charity to restore the river. So it's a group of people who belong to the river and love it and want to make it better.
Great, isn't it? I mean, there's no way I would have found this path without Paul. And it's amazing because I was going to do this walk from Ilford to Barking on the west side of the Roading, and I kind of looked at maps and plotted out a route. but it wouldn't have been this route. That's for sure. It's fantastic. Looking back towards Ilford, I think spring has arrived. It's a beautiful day today. I've got no hat on. It's between the beanie and the cap weather. You can see there's a little park there opposite. I filmed in there before. I have a feeling that's the Kenneth More Park. I was telling my wife yesterday how much I love the films of Kenneth More. And look, beneath it there appears to be a little tributary making its confluence with the Roding. I wonder what that's called. I reckon somebody watching this video will know the name of that tributary there, just the other side of Ilford. Paul was saying they call this the midden, from all the rubbish that was thrown in there by the unofficial encampments here along the riverbank, hidden by the brambles, and they cut their way into a massive mound of rubbish that was being washed down into the river, and they've helped clear it out. It's amazing that volunteers do this. It's incredible, really.
This was just all bramble. We could sort of see some rubbish in there. So we basically hacked all this bramble and blackthorn away to try and get in. And as we did that, we just saw there was more and more rubbish. It was basically waist deep. And what's happened is the people who were living in here were basically just throwing all their waste for years into a giant pile here.
They dragged all of this up that slope in the driving rain. They dragged it all the way up from down there. What an incredible effort. So all this is going to be taken away, hopefully in the not too distant future. What's amazing is, why would you have an electric fan down here? People must have had generators. Going down now, back down towards...
We had to chop away the blackthorn to get in here to actually... This is all blackthorn here, look. Good slow territory in the winter. And we had to basically chop all the branches away to actually get in to remove all this rubbish out of there. But we've mostly done it. There's a bit to go on the midden over there. But it's pretty good in here.
Now you can actually get through here, through the midden, out to the river. It's interesting when you read the old topographies of London. Around the fringes of London there were always kind of what they call tramp colonies, unofficial encampments around the fringes of London. So I suppose it's nothing new about this, but the problem is that it creates such enormous waste and rubbish. And what Paul was saying, there was massive midden of kind of plastic mostly, or a lot of it was plastic, and it was below the high water mark of the river. So when the river was in spate, in flood, it would just wash all that plastic all the way down. So although you have to have empathy for people that are living in a bush essentially and building a home in the bush, you can't have this level of pollution and dumping and crap and rubbish being just left all along the riverbank. This is where somebody had literally kind of built a house on this concrete base that was here. Yeah, it must have been for some sort of...
2 houses.
Right, that's not a house. Wow. It must have been maybe part of the wharfs. Do you think there could be... It wouldn't have been Second World War infrastructure, maybe?
It's not really a pillbox. There's this, looks like what's the face of a crane or something.
Yeah.
There's about half a dozen of them along the river here.
Really?
There's a few more down there as well. One of the things we'd love to do now, we've cleared it of rubbish. We'd quite like to maybe build some kind of either a little community nature centre or a bird hide or something, so you can sit here and like look out onto the river. Like something out of wood or reclaimed materials would be quite cool.
It's like a lost world down here. It's a completely hidden other place, this other world by the banks of the River Roding. Looks as if there was a fire here, and Paul was saying that he thinks that the fire at this particular site here was what ended the encampments. I mean, they were like little houses apparently, like furniture and utilities and stuff in here.
So it's obviously a bit depressing down here with the rubbish all the way up there, but on a more positive note, you know, dozens of volunteers have basically given up their time to help clear all this, and we're probably 3/4 done now. Once the COVID restrictions are loosened, they plan to have another couple of days to finish clearing it. Hopefully TfL will take the rubbish away, and by opening this section up to the public and keeping people walking here, we're hopeful of stopping any sort of ridiculous ridiculous build-ups of rubbish like this again. So, and keeping it beautiful and natural. As you can see, it's slowly starting to become again. This bush here had an almost comical level of Lambrini bottles in it. If you think I'm joking, you can see them up here, John.
This is where there was a massive stash of Lambrini bottles, hundreds of them, hundreds and hundreds. This was all stuff that was taken out of the shacks that were built here. A fridge, computer keyboard.
On the next section of our walk, we approached a big area of reed beds cut off from public access for 50 years that Paul called the Roding Wetlands.
And here it is, it opens up, this massive reed bed here. As Paul says, halfway between the towers of Barking and Ilford. So this is part of the tidal roding, Paul, isn't it? And you're saying what, the spring tide goes how far?
Well, I'd say I haven't actually been down for it, but basically probably about shin level here, and that's why the reeds are all here, because it gets wet.
Wow.
If you look at the maps in the 19th century, this is marked as saltings. This has always been like an open area of the river, and it's really incredible habitat. You know, there's not many semi-tidal salt marshes in, you know, inside London. You know, we're in the suburbs of London, miles from the Thames, and yet there's a tidal salt marsh wedged between Ilford suburb and the North Circular.
It's amazing. It's incredible. Paul was saying this is tidal salt marsh, sort of nestled here in the suburbs between Ilford and Barking and the North Circular Road. It's quite incredible. To my shame, I'd never actually heard of the Lavender Mount. I'm sure some of you now will be disgusted with me, but it was part of the prehistoric settlement at Uphall Camp, which I've talked about before, pre-Roman settlement on the edge of Barking. And the Lavender Mount was over there where those flats are. Apparently they were built on the Lavender Mount. It was there right into the 20th century. Paul's just pointed out another possible tributary coming out there on the other side. It's quite a big one again, not marked on the maps. You can see there's quite a lot of water being discharged into the river there. So this is actually the boundary of Uphall Camp, and the Lavender Mount would have been further along the river here. And that housing estate over there was built on the site of a chemical works, which itself was built on the site of the ancient Uphall Camp. Shows the growth of the development along the roding. The bottom is 1870.
1894.
1894, wow, this is 1894, and then this one here
25 years later.
Right. It's incredible, isn't it? Passing now through Little Ilford, not far from Barking. Here are some trees that have been planted by the Friends of the River Roding beside the road. It really is amazing that this group of volunteers have created this beautiful path that we're walking along. It's amazing. Hawthorn coming into bud. It's a classic bit of Edgelands here, beneath the North Circular and the river. Got a little industrial estate built on the site of a former mushroom farm. That was just a little detour to look at the other open spaces in the area. A little Ilford Park up there, the allotments, this other sort of open space, former mushroom farm. But we can go back to the river and we can walk down to Barking. Very excited to see the next bit as well, particularly. I mean, this has all been a revelation, to be honest with you. But certainly when we get on the other side, toward the edge of Barking town centre, I swear, I think another world opens up. Yet another world opens up. Thames water pumping station here. Gives you a completely different perspective of this area when you see it at this level from the riverbank.
Yeah.
A view that you don't get. Looking down towards Barking here. Paul's pointed out the gurgling sound of another tributary over there.
Paul talked glowingly of how this was an example of the roading rewilding itself. After the concrete wharfs of the gasworks had gone, the reeds and the mudflats had returned.
See, the roading is there where the bridge is. You see the piers of the bridge all the way back here where Paul's standing. This is where the high tide mark of the roading comes up to, which is kind of astonishing. So Paul's just pointed out, look there, the confluence of the Loxford water and the roading. Look at that, it's stunning. And I'll repeat the story, Paul, if you'll forgive me. Paul's rode along there as far as Ilford Lane.
We got bored during lockdown, so me and another boater, Simon, we decided to see if we could get through the tunnel and see what was on the other side. So we took our rowboat on a rising tide, sort of having to duck down on the roof of the tunnel, and it goes about 200 metres in the pitch black, and you emerge into daylight in basically like a sort of concrete channel between two flats, and there were people on their balcony who'd never seen anyone on this river. Suddenly a rowboat emerges from the tunnel. But yeah, it's probably the most substantive tributary of the roading in this area that you can still kind of get into. Most of the rest are just piped over and forgotten.
This has been such a walk of revelations, complete eye-opener.
This section of the footpath here, beneath the bridge, is the crucial missing link between Barking and Ilford. The high tide turns this section into a muddy bog, so the Friends of the River Roading built this brilliant plank walk here to keep your feet out of the water. Well, most of the time apparently, about 98.8% of the time, Paul said.
This is amazing space under this bridge here, absolutely incredible. So this is now an official footpath, and we've crossed boroughs over into the London borough of Barking and Dagenham. This is another little stretch of semi-tidal marshland here, just between the North Circular and the roading. I mean, look, this has been eye-opening on so many levels, but one of the things that's really interesting is it does make you look at the North Circular in a different light as well, because you can see that because of the presence of the North Circular, it has kind of protected this stretch of land beside it, because you couldn't build here, and it kind of acts as a buffer. But like Paul was saying as well, it's going to make it potentially easier as part of his Edgelands vision to connect this park here, hopefully, this footpath along the roading, with the green spaces on the other side of the North Circular. This is the former gasworks sports pitches here, currently left. Well, you fear development, but this is part of the Friends of the River Roading's vision. Look, you can see how it's marshy. It's to return it to marshland, to create a beautiful marshland park here. You see it as being a bit like Leighton Marshes and Walthamstow Marshes.
Yeah, or Hackney, those marshes are so used and so well loved, and I really believe this could be the same for the people of Barking, East Ham and Little Ilford. Just imagine this with some wildlife ponds, pathways, trees, play areas. This very built up around here. There's very little wild space, and this could be such a jewel. It could be something very special here for local people, I think.
So we're back on the riverbank now, back from beneath the flyover. Look at this wonderful area of reeds, this reed bed here. Tidal salt marsh or semi-tidal salt marsh, amazing.
This area of reed is pretty ancient. It has exactly the same shape on maps going way back into the 19th century, and it's known as the Saltings. It's where the Back River, which is a river that flows off the roading and flows parallel to it through Barking town centre and rejoins after Barking at a place called Handtrough Creek by Jenkins Lane. It's where it comes off traditionally. So the river has now been cut off and filled in, but the saltings that led to it are still here and still regularly fills up with water at high tide. Yeah, so just heading towards the end of the walk now, which is the River Roading Trust moorings. So this is the community of boats that we founded to spearhead the restoration of the Roding. So much of the volunteer work and the money to fund the project comes from these boaters who form the core of the community.
This is your mooring. This is the entrance. Look at it. This is such a
family Robinson vibe.
Yeah, it's such a magical world, Paul.
Really special because it's semi-tidal marsh, like we saw earlier. So the reason for the boardwalks is the highest tides come up to just below the level of the boardwalk. So at spring tide, this is basically a lake.
This is a 15-minute walk from the centre of Barking. Would you believe? This other little world down here.
This is our little communal area on the edge of the reeds. It's actually built on a giant Japanese knotweed patch, which we've largely eliminated by blocking out its light, which is quite good. And it's mostly built with foundations of willow. So it's the same willow logs that we got chopped to make the navigation earlier, and then the logs are then pushed deep into the mud, and that then holds up this terrace.
So this bath is filled with water from the Roding, muddy water for the Roding, and then heated by lighting a fire beneath it. That's where the fire for the bath is, there underneath the bath, for the fire bath. We've got a fire pit made from a washing machine drum. That's Paul's boat down there. There's a heron down there, look at that. Paul was saying that used to be the world's largest asbestos factory over there, right next to the beautiful River Roding. And now, underneath all those houses, obviously they decontaminated that land before they built those houses on it.
They mostly just capped it and built it.
So what you're just saying about your how you get power down here. How do you watch the telly and use the internet down here?
I don't have a TV, which makes it easier. But we're all off grid. So my power is from solar, which then goes into batteries. And with these £5, you get more than enough energy. Gas, you're bringing in bottles. Wood for the wood burning stove. Got a compost toilet, and then the one thing we don't have here is water, so you have to normally cruise down to the town where we've got a tap to fill up with water. But last year I put in this rainwater collection system, so all the water from my roof runs into that gutter and then that butt, which then I put in my water tank and then just use it straight off for washing up, and then I've got a water filter for drinking, so I'm now completely self-sufficient.
So you're not worried about acid rain or anything like that then?
It goes through a filter for drinking.
Right. Okay. So this is the raft they use for cutting back the growth along the Roding there. So you just have to float on the tide.
Yeah, and also getting rubbish out is quite handy for that. So you literally just wait for the tide to come in, you cast off the rope, and the tide just takes you all the way up. So we've gone all the way to Ilford, so all the way we walked today on one tide.
All these plank walks here all float. So when the high tide comes in, these raise with it. What an amazing little world down here on the banks of the River Roding, right on the edge of Barking town centre. It's incredible. You would never know there's this incredible kind of little world here with fire baths and plank walks and birds in the reeds. It's astonishing, really astonishing. So you get a view from this bridge here. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for taking me on that incredible walk, a walk of revelations.
It's really beautiful taking someone who is like clearly loves this kind of thing and is interested in it through a place that you love and explaining it and showing it. There's something quite magical about that. So thank you.
Have you got a sign off for people watching, how they can support your work and all the rest of it?
Do join our Facebook group, Friends of the River Roding, or check out our website, which is riverrodingtrust.org. And when COVID restrictions are and lockdown restrictions are over, if you want to come on one of our volunteer days, help to get rid of more of that rubbish we saw earlier and plant some trees and get out on this beautiful river, then we post the details on our Facebook group. So do come and join us.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
And also come and walk along the river. Come and see it. Come and walk that route and make it used and loved by people again. I think that's quite important as well.
What an incredible experience that was. I must admit that completely confounded my expectations for today. It was amazing. Obviously, I didn't make it anywhere near, creek mouth, but I'll have to pick up the walk from here down to the Thames another day. But that was astonishing, and what an amazing work that they're doing there. The River Roading Trust that Paul and the others down there have set up. Incredible work. It's a real vision. I think London has these kind of visionaries. These people just have an idea and they just go and make it a reality. And what they've created there and overcoming all the obstacles, it's just really stunning. And so thank you so much to Paul, but also thank you so much to you for coming along on this walk with us today. Amazing. I mean, as I always like to say, I look forward to seeing you on the next walk, wherever that may be. And after today, I mean, who can say what we'll encounter next time? Take care, have a great week, and I'll see you on the next walk, wherever that may be. Wanstead Flats for sunset. Perfect place to be.